Welcome. My guest today is Sandy Adelsberg, who's one of the owners of Veritas Property Management. Veritas Property Management is one of the most respected and innovative property management firms in New York City. They serve co-ops, condos, and multifamily rentals. Um, Sandy is one of the owners. She's been in the property management business for over 30 years. She's been a licensed real estate broker for a long time. Welcome, Sandy.
Hi.
So before we get into talking about today's real estate market, Sandy, just wanted to ask you some questions, or could you just tell us a little about, I guess, how you got started in the real estate business, and then we can talk about your company Veritas. But let's just start with your background and introduction to real estate.
All right. Well, after I graduated college in 1980, I living in New York City, which is not where I'm originally from. I'm originally from Michigan, and I left to go to school here and had always believed that I would stay here, which I did. A few years after finishing school, I went into commercial real estate as a broker for a large firm. This is like early 1980s, mid 1980s, for a large firm called Griner and Maltz. They still exist, and I developed a commercial portion of their business because they were primarily an industrial real estate company, but very big. And it was a different time and a different method of doing real estate because there was no internet, but I loved it. It was a lot of fun. Took a lot of time, but you made money, so that was the reason behind it all. Then I got married, and about 3 years later, I had my first kid. And I was literally in the hospital on the phone with clients dealing with deals after I had this baby. And then I came home, took maternity leave for 6 weeks, went back to the office, and 4 hours later, I went into my boss's office and I said, Dick, I can't do this. I have a baby at home. I didn't have a baby for somebody else to raise her. I quit, which I did. And went home, and for a year, I hung out with my child. And by year 2, I started thinking about business ideas, did other things business-wise. And by the early 90s, when there was a time of a lot of upheaval in the real estate market in New York and in the country due to the stock market crash and the savings and loans devastation, the foreclosure market began to develop in New York for the co-op business, and I started going to auctions and buying co-ops, or there were people who bought blocks of apartments, which had blocks of unsold shares in co-ops or condos, who had to get rid of them because they owed too much money and couldn't keep them any longer. So you were buying apartments for nothing, literally. When I say nothing, you could buy apartments in New York for $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 a unit. And of course, people said, well, they may not have any value. I think that was my ex-husband who said that. And I said, well, I'm sure that somebody will pay me what I paid for these one day. I can't imagine that that I can lose money. If worse comes to worse, I'll break even, and that'll be the end of it. So that business continued to grow, and it got to a point where I was doing a lot of the management in-house by myself and with an assistant, but we couldn't really handle it any longer. And I was at a board meeting, because when you buy blocks of apartments, you get a spot or two sitting on the co-op boards. And I met this property manager who was different than these other board meetings that I would go to with other property managers. And he was really, really smart. And he was really efficient, and his name was Carl Bornstein. And he just wowed me in comparison to every other property manager that I had met in terms of his efficiency and knowledge. And so when I could no longer manage stuff, I then called Carl and asked if he was prepared to manage anything for me. And he did. And I began brokering stuff, like sending stuff out for him. So Carl began managing properties for me, and then his plate got too full. He couldn't take anything else on. And I then gave some stuff to another person in the office who currently is my other partner. His name is Jim Maistre. And then I started sending stuff to other firms, which, was good, not good. There were issues. Over the years, I kept saying to Carl, let's start our own management company. Let's start our own management company. I'll give you my stuff, and I know somebody else who will give you stuff. And that was when we opened up Veritas, which was at the end of 2008, to give you an idea. And we started with, let's think, maybe 6, 7 people in the office, and now we have I think right under 30 people here. We have about 12 property managers. We have 6 full-time assistant property managers, part-time. We have other compliance staff, an accounting department of 4 people. And that's what happened. And it was a great move for us. And we manage about 130 buildings, primarily co-ops and condos. However, there are multifamily rental buildings, and that's really my area of interest. And I manage blocks of unsold shares, which is what I own, but for other people as well. And I manage a few co-ops, and we have a bunch of HDFC, which is a specialized restricted type of property for limited incomes. We manage a lot of those, and that's the business.
Sure. So what was it like? I think you said you were purchasing apartments in the 1990s. Have you seen New York change, or what was?
Changed. New York has changed 360 degrees twice, and upside down and a half again. It used to be like the wild, wild west in New York to manage property and to do things in buildings. You could do really whatever you wanted to do. There was no supervision. There was nothing going on. And today you can do nothing without supervision. You can't breathe. You can't.
So you'd say it's a lot more regulated now. Is that it?
Oh, everything is regulated.
Yeah.
And with the development by New York City of DOB now, where everything is online, which is good for them, they can keep track of a lot of things. So yes.
And where is I know you said it's New York City based, your portfolio for Veritas, but is it more heavily concentrated in any of the particular boroughs?
Yeah. So what I still have, and I'm working on winding down my ownership in everything, is primarily in Riverdale and in other sections of the Bronx, and a little bit left in Manhattan. But that is really and Pelham Bay. Oh yeah, Pelham Bay. Pelham Parkway, Pelham Bay, those areas. Yeah, so that's where my stuff is, and I'm hoping to, be out of it for myself by the end of the year. That's the goal.
You're talking about divesting your investments, but you're not talking about Veritas is not.
No, Veritas is still here, still working, still managing.
Of course. So I guess tell me a little bit about, how maybe Veritas is different, or how you guys set up your portfolios, like for managers, like just from a like, let's say from the perspective of a co-op board or a condo board, like what do you think your value add is to them?
Well, we are still on the smaller side from other companies out there. And so I think we have a little bit more hands-on because of that. We look at our property managers who all have different skills. Some can take on a lot more buildings and a lot more units and do fine managing than others. And we're very conscientious about that, because it doesn't do anybody good to fill a property manager's plate with more than they can bite off, because some people are faster than other people with what they do and how they do it. So if they're faster, then they can do more. I mean, clearly they're compensated based on that. But if they can't, then that's okay too. What we also have, which I find is not the case in a lot of places, is that every property manager has an assistant. Now, it's basically about a 2-to-1 ratio, two property managers per assistant. And it might be that one property manager has 2 different assistants because they were part of a portfolio of a different building. But because their assistants are sitting at desks all day long, and they handle a lot of the things that the manager who's out in the field shouldn't have to manage. And then another area where we've really grown a lot in is third-party compliance. So most of you probably are aware that New York City, with all its regulations, is big on compliance because it's a big money-making area for them. If you're not compliant, they get to throw fines on you, and they make a lot of money with those fines.
Right.
And if they can't find the fines, they'll look even harder for them because it's constant. It could be for sanitation tickets, that some sanitation guy has it in for your building and is there twice a day and finding you at 6:30 at night because he saw some cigarette butts underneath a car that he expected your super to go sweep up at 6 p.m. at night. The city makes a lot of money on all this stuff, but the compliance is very, very hard to keep up with. It's never ending, and it always has something new. Every month there's a new piece of compliance. So we have been farming that out to specialists who are really able to stay on top of that.
Right.
I know one example that just happened this week, which is the most absurd, or last week maybe, the most absurd thing I've heard of in a long time. You know, when you have rent stabilized tenants, and because I do a lot of the multifamily buildings, I have to follow through with leases for rent stabilized tenants. Well, these leases, aside from getting bigger and bigger and bigger with another sheet and another sheet of an addendum being attached to it every year for the city, you have to send these out registered certified mail, right? Everybody's aware of that, so that you get the sheet back, so that if there's a court case, you can prove that you did send a lease out on time and that the tenant received it. Well, we were getting all these calls from tenants that they didn't receive a lease, and we went to, and my assistant, Myra, she goes and calls up the post office, a particular post office where all these leases are going through, to open up a case. Where are our certified leases?
Right.
And some manager gets on and says, "Oh, we're sorry, they're all sitting here in a pile.
Oh, wow.
We have not delivered them." Now, these are time sensitive. They cost $17.73 each to mail out. So you should know how much they cost. And yet the post office has sat on them in somebody's inbox waiting for whenever they think. So now you even have to follow up with the post office to see if the leases that you sent out for $17 each have gone out. I mean, this is what we're up against.
They don't make it easy.
No.
For sure. So how about, like, from that perspective, I know you haven't been, you're in the trenches, but in a different way, but from the perspective of a property manager working at Veritas, I guess they have assistants, so that's sort of one thing that I think is probably different than some other companies. Can you think of anything else, or what would draw us to work at Veritas?
Yeah, sure. Well, we pay our bills very quickly to our vendors, and because of that, our vendors are very appreciative. In fact, I took over a large building this past October from a large company, and I got bills afterwards that were over a year old that had not been paid. And I would talk to these vendors and say, "Well, why didn't you go after it?" He says, "You have no idea. You just go into a hole, and nobody's willing to help you find the bill or pay it." So we like to treat our vendors well, and I always make a point that if there's a building I'm working with that's going to give a vendor a hard time. And every building is different because there's different boards. I won't jeopardize my relationship with that vendor because I have a difficult board that won't, that just can't allow things to be pushed along, which is very, very important.
Sure.
We also allow our property managers to choose vendors that they like. We don't have a list of approved vendors that they have to use. They can, if they know someone and that person has serviced them well, or they want to try somebody else, that's okay with us. So we don't put that type of chain on them to do what they're comfortable with. So I think that that's very helpful. They feel really independent. Nobody's watching a clock. We expect them to be honest and do the right thing, but property managers don't have to punch a clock and come in like that. It doesn't work. But
Right. No, I mean, they work long hours, so I'm sure they
very
appreciate
long
it.
hours,
Yeah.
especially because of the meetings that they have to
Right.
attend for
Right.
call.
Right. Sure, they appreciate the flexibility. So what are some of the issues that some of the bigger issues that you think your boards are facing lately, like in here we are in 2024?
Well, how to make ends meet and not have to raise the maintenance by big percentages every year. But, you know, New York is paying for all the floods and the tornadoes and the hurricanes in the south of this country. We're eating those kinds of insurance wise. We are eating and paying to keep the insurance companies afloat, because one thing all of you and all of us know is insurance companies don't like to lose money. They don't like to pay and they don't like to lose. They only like to make money. So if they're not making money, you know, in the Florida Panhandle, they'll figure out how to charge New York more for their insurance. We have a problem in the courts in New York, particularly in the Bronx, where you have buildings in the Bronx that are working class buildings, people who are blue collar, people who get a paycheck and they have to make it work. But because of the stalemate in the courts in New York of getting evictions and getting people out of apartments who don't pay, it takes 6 months now from when a warrant is issued to even think that you're going to get that person out. 6 months in the Bronx. I mean, and you haven't taken money from this person in over a year to even get to that point where a warrant was issued.
Right.
So all these things, the legal aspects of running a building is very, very difficult today. You know, just you can't, there's no vacancy increase, for example. So in a rent stabilized tenancy, the tenant who a tenant moves out, you have to pump in a bunch of money to make the apartment habitable, and you can only increase the rent by a maximum of let's say you spend $45,000 to fix the apartment. Let's say you spend $25,000 to fix the apartment. You can only get $15,000 on it, and it's broken out over a period of, do you remember how many years, Steve? Can't even remember. You have to break that $15,000 out over.
I don't remember off the top of my head, but I know, you know, since the housing, you know, housing stability and HSTPA, you know, went into effect. I mean, it's much more difficult with you know, rent stabilized apartments to make money, and the vacancy increases and everything else is just not nearly as lucrative as it used to be. And, you know, really it's difficult. I think a lot of people, I'm sure you know, purchase portfolios based on one set of rules, and, you know, they sort of flip the script. I don't know how they pushed that through in Albany, but a lot of property owners, you know, don't have, you know, nearly the you know, ability to make money on their investment. Yeah.
Correct. And their insurance goes up, and they have to comply with all kinds of laws every year. There's now, if you have garages, you have to have those inspected. Now everybody has to have the parapet walls on the roof inspected every year. All these little things or big things add up. And this has nothing to do with the big stuff like the local law 11 work or local law 152 or the energy conservation. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm really in favor of that stuff. I think that's why we were not gonna have a situation like Sunnyside,
Right.
Florida here. But you have to be able to, if you want people to keep their buildings pristine, you have to give them the ability to make some money on it, and that's where we are struggling in New York.
Yeah, if you want people to stay in New York, you have to make it a little more of a friendly business climate.
That's right.
So what about what about some success stories or some challenging stories?
Okay, well, there's lots of those. Success stories. I began managing an HDFC co-op on the west side of Manhattan, Midtown West. Do you need me to explain what that's a government type building? It's a co-op, but there's income limits that that the owners of the co-ops can only have when they purchase the co-op. They can't, make a ton of money and get this deal. So generally speaking, in HDFCs, the real estate taxes are very, very low to help make them more affordable for people. And when we took over the building from another prominent management company, they gave me $60,000 is what they claimed they had. And we couldn't get, at first they didn't even want to give it over and claim that the election was fraud and blah, blah, blah. Then we finally got the head of HPD had to get involved in this and told them you have to hand it over. They won fair and square, the other people. 60,000 we got, and within 2 years, I had over $400,000 in the bank for them.
Wow, that's great.
Because, I wasn't, we're not corrupt. You look at the commercial leases there and you see that nobody's being charged their real estate taxes like they were supposed to be. Or you're collecting the flip tax that you're entitled to when somebody sells an apartment. So we built it up. We got a loan for a new boiler, everything. The building is gorgeous now. It used to look like a dump, and you should see it. The hallways are beautiful, the lobby, the roof is new, the facade has been done. So everything's been done, and we still have quite a bit of money in the bank.
Yeah, I mean, I think that speaks to that. I think, having a proactive property manager, a knowledgeable property management company there, and also a board that's, I guess, proactive or takes advice and,
Yeah, very helpful.
Right.
Yeah, very helpful. And their maintenance is really, really low. I have one building that on the Upper West Side, another HDFC, where you should know the maintenance for a one bedroom is $199 a month.
Wow.
And the 2 bedrooms are $250 something a month. And they have $1.5 million in the bank.
It's amazing.
Why? Well, for this building, they also have commercial tenants. So the commercial tenants bring in 30 grand a month. And then on top of that, they kick in a portion of the real estate taxes. So it's all keeps speed, and they get flip taxes when people sell. So the apartments have a lot of value because they're in Manhattan, right? So $199. It doesn't matter what you pay for the apartment if you can qualify. That's the hard part. It's a bargain for the rest of your life. What's it going to go up to? A one bedroom, $250 if necessary, but they don't need the money. We still run at a profit with the $199 and $250 respectively for maintenance.
It's amazing. So what do you think are some of the I guess some of the challenges of property management today and some of the things that you enjoy about the industry?
Oh, we don't want to talk about what I enjoy. That opening a can of worms. I don't know what I enjoy about the industry any longer. I think the compliance has really made it very difficult. But what was your first question again?
The challenges.
The challenges are keeping up with the compliance. Right. Because if you don't, here, another example, this building that I took over in Riverdale, a rental building, 127 unit building. They had to do local law work. They didn't do local law work. They had a scaffolding up. They were considered unsafe. I've got the money. I sent the partners emails about what's going on there. and we're getting everything done. But if you don't comply, you owe the city a lot of money.
Right.
And you owe the city money not just for the city, you owe lawyers have to get involved. No offense, Steve,
Sure.
if that's for you, that's helpful. But everything becomes a fortune. It's $1,000 a month not to have complied with local law 11, $1,000 a month. It's been a year now for this building. So just the fees, they're gonna owe, once we get this opened up and running, we're gonna owe that kind of money, plus some.
So,
You know, I can't help that. I wasn't my call when they didn't comply. So you have to stay on top of it, and if you don't, the fines are exorbitant, and that's a real challenge. And there's so many things to stay on top of.
so I think you have a pretty good pulse on the sales market. Where do you, I know, I think they're saying that interest rates are going to go down. What do you think about the, sales market for 2024? If you want to make a bold prediction, like, you think we're heading up, we're heading down, or, I know brokers are usually trying to be optimistic, so.
I think that there's the activity is okay right now. It's picked up, but if a co-op isn't financially sound, you have, and they're not doing what they have to do to become financially sound, it's a real uphill battle to get a bank to do a loan for someone. They just are afraid. And that's one of the real challenges. Not everything that's sold in New York is $1 million plus. I'm not talking about that market. I'm talking about the market of working people, not Wall Street people. That's not what I'm talking about. So for working people who want to continue to work in New York, it's very, very hard.
Right. So I guess this would, what part of what you're saying is that the building's financials are really important in the maintenance of the building, or it's gonna be difficult for owners there to sell potentially, or for buyers to qualify.
Right. It's like the thing I taught my kids when they graduated from college and they wanted, moved and needed a credit card. I said, listen, I gave them advice on how to build their credit. I said, but credit is everything. And if you have good credit, everybody wants to talk to you. And if you have bad credit, no one wants to talk to you, be involved with you. No one wants to help you. If it's good, they'll help you. So it's no different than a building's financials. If you can't keep them up, however painful it might be, because, as an owner, oh my God, my maintenance is going up another 3%. It's going up another 4%. Nobody wants that. But we didn't, as owners in co-ops or condos, we didn't create the insurance industry problems of today. We didn't create all the costs involved in operating today. And from a management point of view, nobody wants to even pay us to handle half that stuff. That's the hard part too. I always would say, I wondered, this is for most people, owning their co-op is their most expensive piece of investment. It's, nobody, if let's say if the apartment costs, let's just use the number 300,000. Well, somebody in a $300,000 apartment isn't wearing a $300,000 diamond ring. This is what they have. This is the most important thing. Be kind to your property manager and don't agree to pay us a living wage on property management side. Otherwise, we just can't function. In our office, well, everybody wants to get a raise every year, right? They want to make a little more money on their salary, whatever percent that might be. We're just trying to stay ahead or even between the salary expectations and what we can bring in management fees. And that's the hard part. People don't think we're worth what we charge.
Yeah, I think property management is definitely, it's very underrated. I don't think people appreciate, what they're getting. And when I hear people talking about, self-managing, which I hear once in a while. I'm like, that's, to me, just sounds like a recipe for disaster. It's way
It
too
is.
complicated. There's so much more that goes on behind the scenes that people are not aware of. So,
And there's a potential for theft.
yeah.
And if I've seen self-managed buildings that have come into this office where reserve funds were completely devastated by former board members. It's not unheard of, and it happens. It's like
Yeah,
if
no,
you have
that's
a brokerage account, you gotta check it every once in a while to see how your money is doing. If you leave it up to somebody else all the time and you never see, who knows what's going on? It's no different. Check what the management company is doing and ask questions. If they're honest, they'll tell you the truth. And if you see that they're not, then it's time maybe to reconsider who's handling your most important investment of your life, which is your primary residence.
So switching gears, you're a pretty intense person, Sandy. I know from working with you. How do you unwind and relax when you're not doing property management? What else do you enjoy doing?
Let's see. Well, I like to practice. I practice yoga and I also exercise. But that's always typically in the daytime, in the morning, or on the early side.
Yeah.
What do I like to do? I like to hang out. I like to go to shows. I listen to a lot of music. Believe it or not, I'm a big rock and roll fan, and I don't mean like 80s or 70s or 60s music. I'm very current. I go to see shows all over in small venues of
Do you
artists.
Cold War Kids?
Yes, I do.
I'm going on Friday.
Good for you.
Webster Hall. Yeah.
Yeah, I love Webster Hall. It's a great venue, lots of fun.
Yeah, I'm looking
Um,
forward to that.
so I go to shows. I live in New York part-time. I also just now have a house in a place called in Litchfield County, Connecticut. I don't
Oh,
know
wow.
if people who are listening know where that is. It's the northwest corner of Connecticut. It borders with Massachusetts, and not the Boston part, but the South Massachusetts. In any event, there are no people there.
So you get to decompress.
Cows, there's lots of cows and lots of farms, but there are no people, and it's wonderful.
Oh, that
A
sounds
little cold for my taste because we're up on a hill, but it's very, very beautiful, very elegant, and not destroyed. So that's something I do, and I'm going to start a big renovation project, so that'll be time consuming for me.
It's great. So how can people contact you, Sandy? What's the best way to get a hold of you if they're interested in contacting
If they want to
Veritas?
talk to me, they can call me in the office. I'm around. If I don't pick up for some reason, please leave a message. I'll call you back pretty quickly.
What's that phone number?
It's 212-799-2365, extension 305, Sandy Adelsberg.
And then the website is veritasmanagement.com.
Yes.
Great. All right. Well, listen, thanks so much for your time. I thought it was a very interesting conversation, and I'm sure our viewers and listeners found it to be so as well. Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this content, please click like and subscribe. And remember to make every day great.